Comrades, now therefore, as we're exploring and still speaking to John concerning the weapons, concerning the financial weapons of mass destruction waged against our country, we have got now to recognize that even the money, the billions that are siphoned out of the country, will eventually be stolen from the ones that are carrying them. So you are not going to be allowed to have 5 or 10 billion stashed in the Cayman Islands and it stays like that forever. Other tricks, other technologies and terminologies and economic games are going to be played there on you. That will explain away why you lost money. We can steal 10 billion from a country and 10 billion can be stolen from you. At the end of the day, the end receiver basically is in a way stealing from the poor Zimbabweans, but via multiple agents who themselves do not understand that their role is only temporary. Once they are done and dusted, they will be outmaneuvered. Game over. So do not take pleasure in temporary sin. It might appear to you that you are accumulating wealth. These unwise Zimbabweans do not see. But you're not really accumulating wealth for yourself or for your posterity. Your children won't even be allowed. Remember, I told you about the tentacle. That this is a global tentacle. It's a global mammal with multiple tentacles. It is the one that aided you, that facilitated the whole siphoning of the money using accounting firms, using trust funds, using banking channels that they developed, sophisticated means of capturing central bank governors who will come up with laws and central bank what do you call it, in whether the regulation policy, central bank policy that will work against the wealth of the people. The individuals working for the central bank, individuals in government, will benefit for now, and they will bank in foreign jurisdictions. And the same tentacle is going to use, the same mammal will use another tentacle, which is investigative journalism. It comes back to now as investigative to expose you. Or they can even put you on they can put you under duress. Do this or we expose you. You don't do the expose legally. We told you, do that way also expose some more. You don't do investigators are investigating you. You've got gold mafia now. What was the use of gold mafia? That document there. What was its purpose? Because after that, nothing happened. So the tentacles are able to build up a case against you, such that when they're finished using you, when they dump you, there's many ways of which they can take that money from you. They can either just confiscate it through some other international law agencies that will use investigative evidence that that money was stolen, therefore it must be returned back to its people, or it's confiscated, or a fine is paid, or whatever. But in reality, it won't be returned to the people, because the whole idea was to steal from these people. See, that's the crime of the British that they do, that they're busy with these days. Is stealing from poor countries, from poor people, using the poor people's leaders, and eventually stealing from the very same leaders. And the same leaders cannot cry to anyone because it was money that was begotten through illicit means. So you cannot complain to anyone, otherwise you'll be exposing yourself. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. That's the modern day colonization via the Reserve Bank. We need to get our Reserve Bank back. We need to set Iti Mnangagwa free from the duress that he's under. But don't tell him. Because if you tell him, those that put him under duress will figure out another clever way of trying to turn around the situation against the people that want to reclaim their own country. These people have got multiple weapons. They will use lawfare against you, trying to free yourself. They will turn around and make you a criminal and say you're doing crime when you're freeing yourself from them. So that's why I call for unity across the board. For if you're not united, you're going to be used by agents of imperialism. Robert wasn't propaganding when he spoke of imperialism. He still is there. It's still true. There still is imperialism. Of course, the presence of imperialism can also be abused by those who take advantage of it and abuse you and saying it's imperialism. When it's trying to set yourself free, they say you are an agent of imperialism. But imperialism is not white in color or black. Imperialism is one thing. Countries are another thing. People are another thing. White people can be used to fight imperialism. Apartheid in South Africa was fought by white people as well. So British people, British politicians could still be used to fight British imperialism. American politicians in Washington can still work with black Africans to fight oppression coming from other white politicians as well in Washington. So we must be aware of that dynamic as well, so that we don't blanket everyone and say Britain is oppressing us, therefore everyone in Britain. It's not everyone. It's some bad actors in the British financial system in collaboration with some bad apples in the British political system who have colluded with our politicians and financial players who are ready to be corruptible. They collude against everybody else. They too can be charged under British law. Under British law, it is illegal for a British financial entity to aid foreign government politicians in stealing wealth from the citizens. Of course, this political elite will be having their own political goals of impoverishing people. But even their own law forbids them from doing that. But they'll do it because they're human beings, they are oppressive by nature. They can sit as a caucus of politicians and agree that we must punish Zimbabwe because of land divisions. And they will break their own laws. And they will get agents who will get agents who will end up doing things that are illegal even under British law in order to achieve a certain political goal, which still is illegal under British law, prosecutable under British law, prosecutable even under US law. So there could still be lobbyists who will lobby for sanctions on Zimbabwe using something that is understandable, like human rights violations. Right? It did happen. It's not like it's a lie. Some people can lobby as if they are lobbying on behalf of Zimbabweans. But perhaps even the politicians who carry out or who issue that those sanctions might think that, or have been lobbied to think that putting sanctions is the right thing to do because there's an apparent abuse of human rights, which is true. But the ones lobbying for that doesn't care about the human rights either. is part of their system of systemic oppression. They could collude even as some politicians in there, which could still be a criminal offense even under the laws of the US Constitution. So you must understand that dynamic as well. That as much as sacrosanct as the US Constitution is, just like the Americans complain about the deep state that is oppressing Americans, it is the same deep state that is also able to oppress Zimbabweans. But that deep state will be just a group of people breaking American law, prosecutable, even under American law, even by the FBI. Okay? So don't be afraid of them. Say, is America oppressing us? There is Americans in Washington and Americans in New York. There's British people in London that are working very hard to oppress us. What they are doing is a crime, even under British and American law. What they're doing is prosecutable and it can be stopped using their own constitutions. That's why they are stealthy and they do it undercover. And they want us to get to a place of concluding that it is a blanketed state sponsored oppression, of which in a way it is, because it will be state players in Britain who be actively involved in oppressing another state. But one thing that we need to understand that those state players are breaking even the laws of their own state. They, once you blanket the whole state, they are hoping that if you say it's the British oppressing you, well, then we cannot come to the British and ask for help since we are oppressing you. No, 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 sir. We get that trick. The trick here is so that you think that the British are oppressing us. So let us move away from the British. No, it's not all the British. It's part of them in parliament and some groupings of politicians who have determined to break British law and abuse their positions of power and authority and use state machinery to oppress a whole nation. And if an opposition political party, even in Britain, can smell that, it can even prosecute the politicians involved so that they can no longer be voted into power. And if financial institutions in Britain are probed, they could have their licenses revoked or pay huge fines and be stopped from doing such activities. So don't be afraid of approaching British institutions to report British citizens and British institutions, including politically connected British citizens and politicians in Britain and the United States who are working with the Itimnangagwa regime to siphon the wealth of our people. They might construct it in a very nice way and sell it to the British Parliament so that the British Parliament can wage a warfare using sanctions. It will be legalized because the sanctions have got a legal standing, which means there are sanctions against human rights violations. And some people isn't helping. They are violating human rights. They are repressive. They are a repressive government. That is true. It's not a lie. But that doesn't mean that the end results of the one putting sanctions is to avoid the repression. Rather, it is to deeply entrench that repression. So though they follow the law and use lawfare against ZANU-PF, but the spirit behind that whole idea is not a spirit of emancipating Zimbabweans, but it is a spirit of deeply entrenching the poverty of Zimbabweans, the destitute nature of Zimbabwe, so that they can be used as cheap labor. And the extent of that collusion could be even in the majority. It's not a given that it's a minority. It could be in the majority of politically connected people, but brave people as well can rise and fight that. Institutions themselves are governed by law, by British law. And we mustn't fear prosecuting British citizens and British institutions, British politicians who are working against our country. Prosecute them there in their country. For British law, even American law is supreme. That is why they are the global leaders, because we trust in their systems, we trust in their law. So we used to also use lawfare against these secret, and cover these secrets and prosecute them. So you see, I'm opening a can of worms. I'm just a voice speaking on a on your computer or telephone screen with no resources, with no following whatsoever, with no support from anybody, or no nothing, zero. Don't see me talking here as if like I've got an organization. I don't have. I just got Jesus. He's the one who sent me to do this. But gives you the insight, those of you who have got resources and access to certain people in certain positions of power, wherever they are, however, to have some information and some, inspiration to do the work, and appreciate that it is a work that requires a sizable number of people doing different functions at the same time to achieve a goal of totally emancipating 16 million Zimbabweans from poverty. That is a task that does not belong to one man. It belongs to all of us. I am only doing my part. This is what I can do. I've got a phone, I've got a mouth, and I've gotten access to the glory of God. And I speak to him, and then I ask him questions, and then he tells me things. And he pushes me to, even if I don't tell him things, he pushes me towards this direction of freedom. In fact, it is the God's direction. It's not even my direction. It is the God who directs me towards all of these things that I'm doing. So that you too be inspired. I do not know who you are. Perhaps I'm doing all these videos for just 2 people. That's why I keep on working even if I've got 20 views. Because I know that God did not send me to be a YouTube star. Whoever the message is for. Perhaps it's one person. Perhaps there's 2 or 3 or one revolutionalist who's really going to transform Zimbabwe, and they need this information that we're saying right now. Obviously, 16 other million people don't need. They need to watch people talking, people dancing, people talking nonsense. That's what they're interested in. They're busy the whole day watching useless videos while the country is burning. Good day.